Okay, so this is the Daf Yomi for August 7th, 2025. We're in Daf 50 of Avodah Zarah. So it says, furthermore, everyone agrees that also in the case of stones that are near the stone pile dedicated to Mercury, with regard to which it can be said that they fell from it, they are prohibited. So Rabbi Yishmael and the rabbis disagree only when the stones are distant. The Gemara challenges, but the Mishnah teaches that the stones are at the side of Mercury, indicating that they are nearby. The Gemara explains what is meant by the term at the side of. It means at the side of 4 cubits. So the Gemara clarifies the dispute. So Rabbi Yishmael holds that at times idol worshippers initially construct a small stone pile dedicated to Mercury at the side of a large stone pile dedicated to Mercury. Therefore, 3 stones which resemble a complete pile dedicated to Mercury are prohibited. 2 stones which do not resemble a stone pile dedicated to Mercury are permitted. So conversely, the rabbis hold that idol worshippers do not construct a small stone pile dedicated to Mercury at the side of a large stone pile. Therefore, the halacha is not different in a case where there are 3 stones, and it is not different in a case where there are 2 stones. In both cases, those stones that can be seen together with the pile dedicated to Mercury are prohibited, as they may have fallen from it, whereas those that cannot be seen together with the stone pile are permitted. Amarmar, the master, said, in a case where it is known that these stones fell from it, everyone agrees that they are prohibited. And the Gemara raises a contradiction to Rabbi Yochanan's statement from his statement presented in a Braita. With regard to stones that fell from a pile dedicated to Mercury, those that can be seen together with it are prohibited, and those that cannot be seen together with it are permitted. And Rabbi Yishmael says 3 stones are prohibited, but 2 stones are permitted. The Braita indicates that Rabbi Yishmael and the rabbis also disagree where it is known that the stones fell from the stone pile. So Rava said, do not say in the Braita stones that fell from a pile, rather say stones that were found adjacent to the pile. There is no certainty that they fell from the pile. So the Gemara asks, and does Rabbi Yishmael actually hold that 2 stones that are found adjacent to the pile are permitted? But isn't it taught in a Braita? Rabbi Yishmael says 2 stones that are found in the area of the pile dedicated to Mercury are prohibited. 3 stones are prohibited, even if they are found at a distance. So Rava said, it is not difficult. Here, in the second Braita, it is referring to a case where both the pile and the adjacent stones are in the same area, in which case the stones are forbidden. There, in the first Braita, it is referring to a case where they are in 2 different adjacent areas, in which case they are permitted. And what is considered 2 adjacent areas? This is referring to a case where there is an elevated area between them, and evidently stones did not fall from the pile. So the Gemara asks, and are stones that are merely adjacent to each other in this way considered a pile dedicated to Mercury? But isn't it taught in a Braita? These are the stones of a place of worship dedicated to Mercury. So one stone is situated on one side, and one is situated on the other side, and one is situated atop, but not where the stones are merely adjacent to each other. So Rava said, when that Braita is taught, it is with regard to the main pile of stones dedicated to Mercury. But the stones that are added to it are not necessarily arranged in this way. And the Gemara relates, the house of King Yanai was destroyed, and Gentiles came and placed stones dedicated to Mercury in it. So later, other Gentiles who did not worship Mercury came and took those stones and paved roads and streets with them. There were rabbis who withdrew from these paths, and there were other rabbis who did not withdraw from these paths. So it's up in the air. Their disagreement is over whether they can derive benefit from a road that's made with stones that were used in idol worship to Mercury. So in this case, we have Gentiles who move the stones and such. So it says, Rabbi Yochanan said, the Son of the Holy Ones walks on them. Should we withdraw from them? The Gemara asks, who is the person referred to as the Son of the Holy Ones? The Gemara answers, it is Rabbi Menachem, son of Rabbi Simai. And why did they call him the Son of Holy Ones? They did so because Rabbi Menachem would not even gaze at the form on a coin, as it was sometimes an idolatrous symbol. So the Gemara asks, what is the reason of the one who withdraws from those paths? He holds in accordance with that which Rav Giddel says, that Rav Chia Bar Yosef says, that Rav says, from where is it derived that with regard to an offering brought in idolatrous worship, there can never be any nullification of its prohibited status? This is derived from a verse as it is stated, quote, They joined themselves to Baal Peor and ate the offerings to the dead. Psalms 106:28. Just as the prohibited status of a corpse has no nullification, and it is forever prohibited to derive benefit from it, so too the prohibited status of an offering brought in idolatrous worship has no nullification ever. And the one who does not withdraw from those paths says, in order for idol worship to prohibit an offering, I require the offering to be like those offerings sacrificed inside the temple. And there is no parallel to this offering in the temple service, as stones are not brought as offerings. So Rav Yosef bar Abba said, Rabba bar Yirmiyah happened to come to our locale, and when he came, he brought the following Braita with him. In the case of a Gentile who brought stones from a pile dedicated to Mercury and paved paths and theaters with them, they are permitted, as the Gentile nullified their prohibited status. In the case of a Jew who brought stones from a pile dedicated to Mercury and paved paths and streets with them, they are prohibited. And there is neither a carpenter, so nagar, nor a son of a carpenter who can resolve this. That is, no one can resolve the difficulty inherent in this statement. Not a Torah scholar, and not even a scholar who is the son of a scholar. So basically, the idea there is that the Jew cannot nullify this object that was used in idol worship. So Rav Sheshet said, as for me, I am not a carpenter, nor am I the son of a carpenter, and yet I have resolved the difficulty. What is the difficulty that Rabbi Bar Yirmiyah finds in the Braita? The Braita is difficult because of the statement of Rav Gidel that the prohibited status of offerings brought in idol worship can never be revoked. So this is not difficult, as in order for idol worship to prohibit an offering, I require the offering to be like those offerings sacrificed inside the temple. And there is no parallel offering of stones in the temple. So Rav Yosef bar Abba said, Rabba bar Yirmiyah happened to come to our locale, and when he came, he brought the following Braita with him. One may remove worms from a tree and place manure on a cut in a tree during the sabbatical year, but one may not remove worms or place manure on a cut during the intermediate days of the festival. The Braita continues, both here, in the case of the sabbatical year, and there, in the case of the intermediate days of the festival. One may not prune the trees, but one may smear oil on the previously pruned tree on the place where one pruned it in order to prevent the tree from being damaged, both during the intermediate days of the festival and during the sabbatical year. And there is neither a carpenter nor a son of a carpenter who can resolve this. So Ravina said, as for me, I am not a carpenter, nor am I the son of a carpenter, and yet I will resolve the difficulty. What is the difficulty that Rabba bar Yirmiyah finds in the Braita? So if we say that the difference between the intermediate days of the festival and the sabbatical year poses a difficulty to him, this cannot be so. One cannot explain that Rabba bar Yirmiyah is asking what is different about the sabbatical year, that one is permitted to remove worms and place manure on a cut, and what is different about the intermediate days of the festival, that it is prohibited to do so, as this is not a valid question. Are they comparable? With regard to the sabbatical year, the merciful one prohibited only agricultural labor, whereas other forms of exertion are permitted. So with regard to the intermediate days of the festival, even other forms of exertion are prohibited. So Ravina suggests, rather, perhaps the difference between placing manure and pruning poses a difficulty to him. What is different about placing manure that is permitted during the sabbatical year, and what is different about pruning that is prohibited? So Ravina rejects this suggestion. This is also not a valid question. Are they comparable? So the purpose of placing manure is to preserve the tree, and therefore it is permitted, whereas the purpose of pruning is to enhance the tree, and therefore it is prohibited. So Ravina suggests, rather, perhaps the contradiction between the aforementioned Braita with regard to placing manure and another Mishnah with regard to placing manure poses a difficulty to him. As the Braita teaches, one may remove worms from a tree and place manure on a cut in a tree during the sabbatical year. And one may raise a contradiction from a Mishnah, Shiviyit 2:4. One may place manure on the saplings, and one may bind their branches to the trunk so that they grow upright, and one may lop off their tops to promote the growth and make shelters for them, to shield them from the sun and water them. All these actions are permitted until Rosh Hashanah, of the sabbatical year. One can infer that until Rosh Hashanah, yes, one may place menorah on the tree, but during the sabbatical year itself, one may not do so. Okay, so Ravina rejects this suggestion. But perhaps one can account for the apparent contradiction in a similar fashion to the explanation of Rav Ukva Bar Chama. As Rav Ukva Bar Chama says, there are two types of hoeing. The purpose of one type is to enhance the tree's health, and it is therefore prohibited. And the purpose of one type is to close up cracks in the ground, which is permitted as it is done only to prevent the trees from dying and not to enhance their growth. So too, one may suggest that there are two types of placing manure. One type whose purpose is to preserve the tree and is therefore permitted, and one type whose purpose is to enhance the tree and is therefore prohibited. Ravina suggests rather perhaps a contradiction between the halacha in the Braita with regard to smearing oil and the halacha in another Mishnah with regard to smearing oil poses a difficulty for him. As the Braita teaches, one may smear oil on the previously pruned tree on the place where one pruned it, both during the intermediate days of the festival and during the sabbatical year. And one may raise a contradiction from the Mishnah, so Shivit 2:5, and one may smear oil on the unripe figs in the 6th year of the sabbatical cycle in order to accelerate their ripening. And similarly, one may pierce them and fill the cut with oil to facilitate the ripening until Rosh Hashanah. So one can infer that until Rosh Hashanah, yes, one may smear, but during the sabbatical year itself, one may not do so. So Ravina rejects this suggestion. That is also not a valid question. Are they comparable? So here the purpose of smearing oil on the place where the tree was pruned is to preserve the tree and therefore is permitted. Therefore, the purpose of smearing oil on the unripe figs is to enhance and enlarge the fruit and is therefore prohibited. So Rav Sama, son of Rav Ashi, said to Ravina, the contradiction between the halacha with regard to smearing oil during the intermediate days of the festival and the halacha with regard to placing manure during the days of during the intermediate days of the festival poses difficulty for Rabba Bar Yirmiyah, since the purpose of this action is to preserve the tree, and the purpose of that action is to preserve the tree. What is it different in this case that is permitted, and what is different in that case that it is prohibited? So this is the reason that Rabba Bar Yirmiyah said to him, there is nothing a carpenter nor a son of a carpenter who can resolve this. There is neither a carpenter nor a son of a carpenter who can resolve this. So Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, in the case of an object of idol worship that is worshipped by means of a stick, that is by beating a stick on another object in order to produce noise, if one broke a stick before it, he is liable. If he threw a stick before it, he is exempt. Abaye said to Rava, what is different about the case where one broke a stick? In this case, one is liable because it is similar to slaughtering an offering, which is a rite performed in the temple. So too, in the case where one threw a stick, it is similar to the sprinkling of the blood on the altar. So Rava said to Abaye, in order for a sacrificial rite to be similar to the sprinkling of blood, I require a form of throwing that scatters the offering, and that is not the case here. So Abaye raised an objection to Rava's explanation from a Braita. One who fed or safat an idol excrement, or who poured a chamber pot of urine before it as a libation, is liable. And that is the end of Daf 50. So thanks for watching.